Hello, everyone. Welcome to another learning workshop. And this one is part of our ongoing workplace challenge series. I'm your coach, Manaz Amjad. And today I bring to you the story of Nora. This is a story of from comparison to compassion. So join me in and let's learn from Nora. Nora's story is about a very common workplace challenge, but this one is a little tricky. While on the face of it, it looked like Noora was one of those very common corporate employee disengaged with her present job, finding her career growth as stagnated. She had worked almost more than a decade in this space, and at present, her state of mind was totally into a state of confusion. She was overwhelmed, stressed, and burnt out. And one thing that kept uh, surfacing up while I spoke to her and coached her was this term analysis paralysis. This is a very common term used in the industry of IT, project management, and analytics. So if you have not heard of this term, analysis paralysis is more like being indecisive. You're not really able to decide. So that's how the present state of mind Noora was in. And the tools I used in this particular session that I'm going to share with you were helping Noora find clarity and direction, also the reason why she was so disengaged with her present job, and how can we find momentum in her career growth, which according to her was getting or almost in stagnation. So the tools I've used here were the one that I really want to highlight here is the case specific Q&A. Then we did some practices of self-compassion and I offered her a perspective. So let's see how through the story of Nora, we can learn the case-specific Q&A technique and how it can help us. If at all, we are also going through something very similar to what Nora is at present going through. So the story goes like this, friend, wherein I have used this case-specific Q&A technique. Nora had a cousin who was in the US, and she was not just her cousin, but also her best friend since her childhood days. And somehow Noora has always looked up to her because she was very smart in her studies all throughout. And Noora always looked up to her, wanted to be like her, and would always compare herself to her in regards to the way she progressed in her school, then in her high school, and then in her career. So the story of comparison of Noora is her constant comparison with her cousin, which she was doing it at a very subconscious level. This was a very tricky case because there was nothing that you could find Noora mentioning it anywhere as she suffered and then she kept thinking why is her career in a stagnation phase and she find herself very disengaged at job. But when I use this case specific Q&A technique, which is all about a set of very specific customized questions to the person's issue so that I could unearth more and more, which was the same tool that I used in case of Nora. And that's how I was able to come across this particular story of comparison that was almost invisible in our entire narrative, but was running very heavily influenced, holding a very heavy influence in the life of Nora. So she would be all the time subconsciously living that story. And that was the reason why she, in her constant comparison, was losing her engagement at the job and also was feeling a bit overwhelmed. And the term that you just may have seen in the previous slide, analysis paralysis is where she was caught up in. So this analysis paralysis brought in a lot of assumptions to her, where her cousin, who was now in US and almost at the same level but in a different industry, Nora found that she was thriving and was having a very successful career. She was earning maybe 4 times more than what Nora was. And every time they exchange information about their career lives and their professional success, Nora would automatically start to compare it with hers, uh, as if it was some kind of a inbuilt, hardwired habit inside her. So she was doing it at a subconscious level. And the more she did it, the more she felt she was left behind. She was not really making any mark. And this kept her all the time at her work, trying to figure out how can she reach that level that her cousin was at. Now, friends, if you really look at this particular story, you might think, how could somebody in some other continent is comparing them and their cousin? But what you may not be aware of is this is a very common tendency we all hold, not just Nora, it's a story of all of us, where we tend to subconsciously compare ourselves with the person who have influence on us. And it could be not necessarily our cousin, but somebody who we consider as our role model or we look up to, or the constant feed of social media where we see people extremely happy, extremely rich, extremely successful, making some insane amount of money, and we keep wondering to ourselves is why is it that we are not there, and why is it that success evade me and everyone else around me seems to be in a state of bliss. This was something Noora was deeply into. And this case specific Q&A that I had put across to her took me almost 2 months, because every time I found something in the narrative that she shared, I would further probe, and that would lead to another case specific Q&A, and that would lead to another, and that would lead to another. So this way it's like a branch of subcategories coming up, where from when we connected the entire pattern, this is that was getting demonstrated. She, in her narrative, explained that she never celebrated her success. She never shared her success because she always felt that she was a fraud inside, as if she doesn't deserve anything, and that she was just wearing a mask of being happy and an engaged employee, but all the time was pretending. She never felt that she can ever be at a very pivotal role or positions. And everything that she internalized by her constant comparison with her cousin, who she only knew via some messages over WhatsApp and nothing more than that, she would be accordingly behaving with the story that she would continuously feed into her mind. So much so that she would also not put her profile on social media. Uh, and she was like, as if people will find out that she's not that good, she's not that capable the way her cousin is. And in her own world, the world around her was comparing her and her cousin and was constantly evaluating both of them and how they are uh, being successful or unsuccessful, while in reality i don't there was I don't think there was anybody or anyone, leave alone her cousin, who would have time to do all of this. But Nora's subconscious mind made her believe so. And this is the reason why she constantly was wearing various masks at her workspace, even in her personal life, and was completely overwhelmed with the constant uh, proxy life, or a dreamy state that she lived in. Now, when I even ask her, this is one question I asked her: what will you do? Do you think you'll be exposed about what? then she said that she was a fraud and that she was not worthy and competent of the role that she was in. And it was just a stroke of luck and fluke by which she just got everything. It has nothing to do with her competence. And to save herself, for that safety, to not be exposed, she always wanted to mask herself and putting up a show that she is all good and happy, while hearts of hearts, she was not. So this case specific Q&A and the deep dive session actually brought out the real truth, her faulty assumptions, her opinion, the proxy war she was at with her cousin, and the constant comparison, which helped us really find what was at play. So if you really pay attention to that, we started with she mentioning to me that her career seems to be stagnated or that she's disengaged at her work. But the reality turns out that she was living heavily influenced under her one pivotal person in her life who she constantly compared with. Maybe perhaps in her upbringing years she was compared this way, and beneath that there was a dire need to feel connected and accepted, and therefore she thought if she would be just like her cousin, perhaps she will equally enjoy the same success and happiness that she defined was there in her cousin's life, and would also equally may have it in her life. So putting an end to all her faulty assumption in the dreamy state was not an easy task for me, honestly. It was a work of almost more than 5 months, but we did it. And in this entire work, more than really addressing a workplace challenge, which was actually not really a workplace challenge, but her state of mind, which she felt disengaged with, having these as reasons, I gave Nora the concept and the practice of self-compassion, self-care, and many ways out of this imposter syndrome or the self-doubt that was almost had been hardwired in her head. With these practices, but it took time. In fact, our assignment was almost completed in a span of 5 months, but she was in touch with me, and I've very specifically asked her to not to lose touch and the practice. And we did some extension of this work in which she, to date, continued to practice this. After a year or so, in the present space, Nora is a woman who's now more self-accepting and happy in her own skin. And to get her here, we underwent almost almost a year, in fact, 6 months, 5 months, and then after that, a bit more follow-ups on her practice and progress. Then again, we restarted the second phase, and it almost took us more than a year to get her to the state, but she finally did it. Friends, this is Nora, and before I close, along with Nora's happy state, one more good news that I would like to share with you here is these two are pages from my website. This one is a resource page, and this one is the blogs and books. And all these courses, journals, workbooks, meditations, techniques, email courses are all free of cost, and most of which Nora has already been through. And they are something that you may need to practice over a period of time. So if any one of you listening this, and if you're just like Nora and you may need support, but at the same time, there's some sense of hesitance. I have seen this in most of my clients before they reach out and speak. It was also there with Noor, and therefore I'm putting this point forth. If you have, if you really want to first put things in practice and get a hang on how coaching works, then I would suggest that pick up anything from any of these pages. All of it is available to everyone who will just visit the website. Work through it, practice it, and I'm sure you will find some real profound changes inside you. And then taking it to the next level, connect with me. You will have the coordinates given in the description box of this video, and we'll talk. And just like Nora, if you want to be coached on a workplace challenge, your subtle behaviors, you need perspective, you're overwhelmed, or anything else, simply connect. Thank you, and I'll talk to you soon.